Hello, welcome back to the channel. So if you caught Saturday's video, we threaded some 2-inch rod. It was 1018, so not the greatest material, but we threaded it 4.5 TPI to fit those nuts, and it went really well. Many of you, great comments, suggestions, a lot of good questions. So we're gonna dive into the questions here because this is Wednesday, our follow-up video. So first one here, and I know this probably seems like what you're seeing on the camera is not what I'm seeing. So let's get into this question. When you were pulling out, I was having a hard time seeing the pull-out point because of the chips and the coolant. How do you know where? Again, different angles. So where the camera is set up versus where I'm set up. You're not seeing through my eyes, you're seeing through the camera. My angle is a lot different than yours, so that really helps. Also, the other thing is either digital readout or a dial indicator on a mag base on the carriage or on the 𝐬𝐨𝐫𝐞. When the carriage hits that, you know where it is. That's how I do it a lot of times. You know, the coolant blocks it, the chip blocks it, but my angle is a lot different than what you saw. Another one, a couple of them actually were asking if a follow rest would help. I tend to use the follow rest on longer stuff. So 12 inches, I was holding it out about 16 because I wanted that little bit of a cushion space. It may have helped, but I just didn't see it necessary. And like I said, the material, 1018, not the best choice, but it's what the customer specified. Might have eliminated the chatter, as was mentioned here. So that one too could have gone either way. I could have done a follow rest or not, but up to the guy doing the job. That's what it comes down to. Okay, this one is one that I think I've touched base on before, and a lot of others have, but there's still a lot of misconception in the whole industry, you know, well, with the hobbyists. 29.5 degrees on the compound. What is the point to that? So your threading tool is 60 degrees. What's half of 60 degrees? Well, that's 30 degrees. So if you set your compound at 30, you're still going to be cutting a little bit on that backside as you feed it in. Going 29.5 puts you just a touch ahead of that, so you're not cutting on the backside. And then I was asking about how some people run in reverse and start closer to the chuck. I don't do that because that is not how the machine is designed to work. When you're running backwards this way with your tool upside down, you're lifting on your carriage, you're lifting on everything. You're not pushing down the way it's designed for the best rigidity. I don't like doing that. I did it on one job and I really did not like it. It wasn't threading, but it works. People do it. I don't like it. Just the personal preference. For those of you that, you know, starting out and worried about that kind of thing, good for you. Do it that way if you want, but I just do not like it. I've threaded to a shoulder my whole life. I've threaded up to the chuck. I've done so many things, and I've always done it to the chuck, towards the chuck. Never had an issue. I think in the almost 30 years I've been doing this, I've crashed twice threading. So you just get good with your machine, get a feel for it. Spend time with your half nut lever. Spend time with your machine, get a feel for it, and you'll get past all that. No problems there. Okay, this one goes back to the follow rest. Like I said, if it were 2 feet sticking out of a smaller shaft, you know, 2-inch shaft, I would do that. Something smaller, you know, it's wherever it starts to deflect the most. You know, when you start seeing a lot of deflection because of the length, that's where the follow rest comes in. In this one, in other videos, you use the 29.5 degree setup from the start. This time you use it only for last few passes. Is this due to the coarseness of the thread? So yes, with a really coarse thread, I'll just plow in. You know, I'm basically just roughing at that point. I could probably use a different tool, but I use the threading tools. I've had really good success with these top-notch inserts. They're just, and I know I'm going to come to that later on. There was a question about that. The difference between the inserts I use and the ones everybody else uses. I find these to be a much better insert. Another question about the 29.5 degree. So I hope I addressed that and it makes sense. Without having a whiteboard and drawing it out, it's kind of a tough one. This guy was talking about a go, no-go gauge. And about the cost of the gauge would eat up any profits. And yeah, you're right. A go, no go gauge would be nice for some of this stuff. But yeah, the cost of the gauge would just eat up all the profits from the job. On the DRO, do you count down to 0 or up to 12? Kind of depends on my mood. Sometimes I will just set it for, whatever. If I'm doing more features off of one end, I'll count down to the number. And then I can back off to the next step, to the next step, to the next step without having to reset. Sometimes I'll run it into the end, set my 0 there. It all depends on my mood. So, it's up to you, personal preference again. This one was asking, when you feed the raw stock through the lathe like you did, is all the weight supported by the 3-jaw chuck, or is there another support wheel in the lathe housing supporting the remaining stock that is hanging out of the machine? If not, is there some rod size, diameter, or length where you would need to support that material outside of the machine? And if so, how is that done? I did not support that, but they weren't overly long. There wasn't a lot sticking out. It all depends. So if it's a long piece and I've got to have more than the length of my headstock, I got to have something sticking out beyond that, I'll chuck it up. I'll have the steady rest out here and then my center out here and work over here somewhere. I'll do that. But otherwise you could add a spider, you could put a plug in the end with a hollow spindle plug so it supports the material. The other thing is don't run it too fast. So the faster you run, the more likely you'll get some tail whip and you'll start shaking things. So you got to be real careful about that. All right, here it is, about the inserts. What do you think of those top-notch style inserts? Absolutely love them. Use them for a lot of things. I have many different styles of them for grooving, some with the radius on them, inside, outside. A lot of them. Love them. I would consider them to be far better than, as this guy mentions, I think you might be the only YouTuber I see regularly using them over the laydown style. I find them to be a much better insert. That's why I use them. I just prefer them. They're versatile. There's so much more you can do with them. That holder is so versatile. One holder, multiple inserts. Whereas the lay-down ones, I don't know that they make grooving inserts. I don't know if they make ones with radiuses. I've never seen them. I've just seen the threading. So I really like these top-notch. They're just an overall versatile, not overly expensive, easy to work with. I just like them. Would you explain how you've become so consistent in the pull-out method? I have done lots of single point and have tried all the tricks, but without the consistent results you get. And of course I'm using a 1942 Smith Drum sliding bed lathe made for the Army, and it's still pretty tight. It will turn a 28-inch faceplate. So it's a pretty beefy. So I don't think your machine is the issue. It's just time, practice, experience. A lot of experience. I've been doing this a long time, so I've got a lot of practice at it. You know, being ready, just being absolutely ready to whip it out, you know. Pull out, whip it out, yeah. A lot of dirty jokes here. So this one again is asking about why is the compound used for threading, and I think I addressed that well. Just that you're feeding in on the angle. You're cutting on one side of the insert instead of two sides. You'll get a better cut. It'll peel that chip off nice. That's why. I hope I'm not beating that one to death. I've had a lot of questions about that. I've seen other YouTubers put anywhere from some to a lot of undercut at the end of the thread. Why do you use no undercut, and what is the pros cons of undercut versus no undercut? So thread relief is what I believe you're referring to here. This job did not call for a thread relief. It called for I don't know what the word is to use. Somebody will correct me here. Somebody will have that word, but it's not a relief. It's just a gradual release of the thread. And that is it's much stronger than your thread relief. You're not cutting all the material all the way around. You're relieving just a little of it. It's a much stronger thread in the end. How do you decide when to change from cross slide to compound slide for increasing depth of cut? Do you feel the tool starts to vibrate a bit more, or as you go deeper with the cross slide? It's all feel and sound. You know, I notice it's cutting, you know, a little rough. It's starting to chatter maybe. Then I'll start feeding in with the compound on these really coarse threads. It's kind of all by experience, all by feel. This one is asking about those thread measuring triangles. They have a little rubber thing. He was asking how they attach to the micrometer. A little rubber thing that just slips over the anvils on the micrometer. So they're really a nice little unit, and there's a formula that you can calculate out for larger threads. So they work really well. I was actually surprised how good they work over, and so much better than the thread measuring wires. This guy was wondering what coolant I use in the lathe, and do I recommend a distributor? I don't want to say what coolant I use or who I get it from, other than Anchor Lube, and you can get that from my online store. But this coolant's getting a little bit harder to get, so I don't want to jeopardize not being able to get it in the future. And then, was there ever a group get together to put the wheels on the bottom of the carriage on the dragline? So no, I did not wind up doing the work weekend that I had planned. Things just have been kind of chaotic this year, and I'm going to get into that on the 5-year anniversary video that'll be right around December 1st. Be the biggest announcement of the channel. Just some big things coming and changing in the future here. So tune in around December 1st, and there's going to be a lot of information there. The coil springs are cool. What are those parts used for? They are actually bolts that hold the jaws in a giant jaw crusher for a rock crusher. So I do many different ones. So that's what they're for. They're holding the jaws in. This one's asking about spindle support again, and I already addressed that one. What is the advantage of cutting the threads versus rolling the threads? I don't need a thread rolling mill. That's the advantage. Thread rolling is wonderful for large production. It's so fast, it's so convenient, but it's costly to get set up in. But it is a really good system if you need to do a lot of threads. So, you know, if you're a bolt manufacturer, you'll roll the threads. But for small runs like this, thread cutting is the way to go. If you weren't filming, how long does it take to do one of those? I think I had it down to 15 minutes. Maybe less, I don't remember. This was actually filmed quite a while ago, so I really don't remember. A lot of people joking about the pull-out method. So if I didn't reply to your comment in the, on the original video, that's because I'm right here. I can sort it out a lot easier, so I can just scroll through and answer. So I'm looking through, and there's a lot of overlapping questions here. And some dumb questions we're not even going to address. Let's see. I think, actually, surprisingly, I think I made it through all of them, which is there's the one. This is the one I was looking for. Out of curiosity, why have the flood coolant over the carbide insert over the actual bar, so it gets carried into the tool as the material rotates? Would that also contribute to keeping both the tool and the cutter cool at the same time? So coolant, you generally want it dumping on your insert to keep the insert cool. That's the purpose of it. But on the material as well, you're catching that material. If you're cutting right, the heat is going into the chip, not into the part. You're still going to get some carryover into the part, but you want to keep that insert at a constant temperature. Keep it cool. You don't want shock loading of temperature. So that's why I try to run it as much onto that insert. If I'm dump it onto the material ahead of or somewhere close to, it doesn't get as much onto that insert. So I'm trying to focus it all on that insert. I already answered that. That was about the threading insert. They're all the Kennametal top notch. So if you're looking for great threading tools, those are the ones. Another one asking about how long it took. So I'm through all of them that I had here. So a lot of good questions. I hope I clarified that on the 29.5. I'll come back to that one. You got your 60-degree cutter, and you set half of that is 30 degrees. So if you set your compound at 30 degrees, you'd still be cutting on this side when you're cutting this direction. Set it at 29.5, and now you're stepping just slightly ahead. It's not enough to really be noticeable, but it won't cut on this back side as you're cutting this direction. So that's why. You could run 29, you could run less, but the less you run, you're going to start seeing a little bit of a step. And the other thing is you're having that angle, you're also feeding in this way and this way, not just this way or, however. It's going in at an angle following that back 30 degrees. That's why you do that. So I hope that explains that a little better. So, that's all we have for questions. So I hope you enjoyed the follow-up video. Stay tuned. We got stuff coming. Like I said, come December, big announcement here on the channel. Big changes, big things happening. So we're going to get on to Squatch's job here at some point. We got a couple more videos I got filmed and already uploaded for the next 2 weekends. Some interesting stuff. And then I'll get on Squatch's thing, and we got maybe this week my father-in-law is bringing tin up from his pole barn that he's tearing down, and we're gonna probably get the tin up on the sawmill shed on the lean-to. And I've got 15-foot logs that we need to saw into 2x6s to get them drying for next year when we do the rafters for the rest of the shed. So the main body of the shed. But this year was priority, get that lean-to done, so at least I can get some tractors under cover for winter. Stuff's been sitting outside for a lot longer than I like it, so getting stuff under cover is real important to me. So Again, hope you enjoyed this follow-up. Hope I answered all the questions. And till next time, get out in your shop and get it done right the first time.